Ethan stood at the grand entrance of the hotel ballroom, his designer tuxedo perfectly fitted, his smile carefully rehearsed. Tonight was his wedding night, a celebration not just of love but of victory. Or at least, that's what he told himself. Guests in sparkling gowns and tailored suits streamed past him, showering him with congratulations. Everything was flawless. The chandelier light glimmering across the marble floors, the string quartet playing softly, the photographers snapping every detail. But under that confident exterior, Ethan's mind lingered on a different thought. He had sent an invitation to his ex-wife, Claire, not out of kindness, but out of spite. Years ago, he had left her when she struggled financially, dismissing her as too ordinary for the future he wanted. She had been heartbroken, left with nothing but bills and the burden of raising their children alone. To him, inviting her tonight was a final act of humiliation. He pictured her arriving in some outdated dress, looking worn out, while he stood tall beside his wealthy new bride. Amanda, elegant and wealthy, was the kind of woman Ethan thought he deserved. Her family's fortune made him feel powerful, important, untouchable. As he glanced at her, she was radiant in a designer gown, chatting with friends, her diamond earrings catching the light. Ethan whispered to himself, "Wait until Claire walks in, everyone will see what I escaped." The whispers among the crowd hinted at excitement. Some guests knew about the invitation. They were eager for the drama, for the scene Ethan had so carefully orchestrated. "Did you hear? His ex is coming," one woman murmured to her husband. "This will be interesting." Ethan's chest swelled with anticipation. He wanted to see her humbled, to remind her and everyone else that he had moved on to something grander. In his mind, Claire was still the poor, broken woman he had abandoned. But what Ethan didn't know was that Claire wasn't the same woman anymore. And when the ballroom doors finally opened, the first sound wasn't laughter. It was a sharp gasp of an entire room stunned into silence. The ballroom doors swung wide, and all conversation stopped. Heads turned. Champagne glasses froze midday, and the string quartet faltered on a note. Every eye fixed on the woman who stepped inside. Claire! But she wasn't the frail, struggling figure Ethan had pictured. She was breathtaking. A silky midnight blue gown shimmered under the chandeliers, hugging her elegant frame. Around her neck glistened a delicate necklace, not loud, but refined. Her hair was styled flawlessly, and her confident smile radiated strength. Outside the tall glass windows, the headlights of a black Rolls-Royce still glowed in the driveway. A uniformed chauffeur shut its door, then waited by the car like it was second nature. Guests gasped. A Rolls-Royce, the kind of car only the wealthy or the powerful arrived in. And then, just when whispers started buzzing, 3 little figures peeked around her. Triplets, 2 boys in miniature tuxedos, 1 girl in a sparkling silver dress, all holding her hands like a royal procession. They carried themselves with a kind of innocent pride, smiling brightly as if they had rehearsed for this very moment. The crowd erupted with murmurs. "Are those her kids?" "Triplets. She looks amazing." Ethan's face drained of color. This wasn't the scene he had planned. Instead of arriving embarrassed, Claire had stolen the spotlight. Even Amanda stiffened beside him, her hand tightening on his arm as whispers grew louder. The guests weren't gawking at her diamond earrings anymore. They were staring at Claire. Claire walked gracefully, her heels clicking against the polished marble floor, each step measured, unhurried. She looked around the ballroom, not with shame but with quiet command. Her eyes finally landed on Ethan, and for a split second she gave him a smile, not bitter, not angry, but knowing. It was a kind of smile that said, "You thought you broke me, but look at me now." Ethan's carefully built world suddenly felt fragile. The humiliation he had planned for her was already beginning to backfire. The room seemed to bend around Claire as she moved forward, her triplets close at her side. Every pair of eyes followed her, and even the music resumed more softly, as though the quartet itself wanted to play in her honor. Ethan's jaw clenched, his smug grin long gone. He tried to tell himself this was just an act, some borrowed car, some rented gown. But deep down, he knew it wasn't. Amanda forced a smile, whispering through her teeth, "Ethan, why didn't you tell me she looked like that?" Her grip on his arm grew tighter. She had expected to be the undisputed star of the evening, the flawless bride. But now she felt overshadowed, her glow dimmed by the arrival of the woman Ethan had dismissed years ago. Claire stopped halfway through the ballroom, pausing to greet a group of stunned guests. "Good evening," she said warmly, her voice calm and steady. She didn't sound like a woman out of place. She sounded like she belonged. One of her boys tugged at her hand and whispered, "Mom, everyone's staring." She bent down, kissed his cheek, and replied softly, "That's because they're surprised we came." The guests chuckled at the children's sweetness, their laughter warm, welcoming. Already, the atmosphere was shifting. What Ethan had hoped would be a cool spectacle was turning into a triumph for Claire. Finally, Claire reached the front. She stood across from Ethan and Amanda, her children gazing curiously at the couple. For a long, tense moment, no one spoke. Then Claire broke the silence. "Congratulations, Ethan," she said, her voice clear but laced with meaning. "I wasn't sure if you truly wanted me here, but since you invited me, I thought it was only polite to come." Her words echoed in the ballroom, polite on the surface but cutting underneath. Ethan opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Amanda shifted uneasily, sensing the crowd's eyes flickering between her and Claire. The triplets squeezed closer to their mother, as if forming a protective shield around her. To everyone watching, it didn't look like a poor ex-wife crashing a wedding. It looked like a queen arriving with her heirs. And that image was beginning to burn into Ethan's carefully crafted night. Ethan's throat felt dry as the crowd leaned in, hungry for every detail of this unexpected drama. He forced a laugh, pretending to be at ease. "Well, Claire," he said, his voice louder than it needed to be, "I didn't think you'd actually show up. Must have been quite a stretch for you to get here." He glanced deliberately toward the Rolls-Royce outside, hoping people would question its authenticity. But Claire only tilted her head, her smile unshaken. "A stretch? Not really," she replied smoothly. "It's amazing how life turns around when you stop depending on the wrong people." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Amanda's face stiffened as if she'd been slapped in public. Ethan's pride burned, but he had to maintain composure. "Interesting choice of words," he muttered, struggling to keep control of the scene. One of the triplets, the little girl, looked up at Ethan with innocent eyes. "Mommy, is that the man who left us?" she asked, her voice high and clear, echoing across the ballroom. The room fell silent. You could hear the soft clink of a glass being set down somewhere in the back. Ethan's face flushed crimson. Amanda's jaw dropped. Guests leaned closer, wide-eyed, whispering to one another. Claire crouched beside her daughter, brushing a hand over her curls. "Sweetheart," she said gently, her voice carrying, "some people walk out of your life because they don't see your value. But that's okay, because it only makes room for better things to come in." The crowd erupted in quiet applause. Not loud, but steady, a ripple of support for the woman who had been written off, now standing stronger than ever. Amanda leaned toward Ethan, her voice sharp as a dagger. "You didn't tell me she had children, your children." Ethan swallowed hard, beads of sweat beginning to form on his forehead. He could feel his perfect evening crumbling, the narrative slipping away from him. This was supposed to be her humiliation, not his. But Claire wasn't finished. Standing tall again, she looked Ethan in the eyes. "You invited me here to embarrass me," she said evenly. "But what you didn't expect was that I've grown. And I don't need your approval or your pity." The crowd erupted once more, this time louder, their loyalties shifting before Ethan's very eyes. Ethan's composure cracked like glass under pressure. He tugged at his collar, scanning the room for support, but all he found were curious eyes and judgmental whispers. The very guests he had hoped to impress were now leaning toward Claire, admiring her poise, her strength, her stunning arrival with 3 children who looked like miniature royalty. Amanda's face was pale with fury. She pulled her arm from Ethan's grip and hissed, "You humiliated me. You told me she was nothing, broken, forgotten. Do you realize what people are saying right now? That she outshines me at my own wedding." Ethan tried to whisper back, but his voice wavered. She wasn't supposed to. Claire's son interrupted, stepping forward with a boldness far beyond his years. "Mom doesn't need anyone to make her shine," he said, his voice echoing in the ballroom. "She raised us, all 3 of us, by herself. She taught us that no matter who leaves, family stays." The room fell silent again, but this time it was filled with admiration. Guests nodded, some even dabbing their eyes. The children weren't just props. They were living proof of Claire's resilience. Claire placed a gentle hand on her son's shoulder. "That's enough, darling," she whispered, though her eyes never left Ethan. "Tonight is their celebration, and we're not here to steal it. We're here because we were invited. And sometimes showing up is enough." Her words struck like lightning. Guests exchanged looks, suddenly questioning Ethan's motives. Why had he invited her? What kind of man lures his ex-wife to his wedding in hopes of humiliating her? The whispers shifted, turning sharper, colder, directed at him now. Amanda, desperate to regain attention, raised a champagne glass. "Let's toast," she announced loudly, forcing a smile. But no one raised their glasses. Instead, eyes drifted back to Claire, the woman who wasn't supposed to matter anymore yet held the entire room in the palm of her hand. Claire, sensing the shift, gave a graceful nod to the crowd. "I wish you both happiness," she said sincerely, though her tone carried layers Ethan could feel slicing through his pride. Then, with her children's hands in haze, she turned as though she were ready to leave, like a queen departing after victorious entrance. Ethan's heart pounded. This wasn't over. He couldn't let her walk away like that, winning. "Wait!" Ethan's voice cracked across the ballroom, louder than he intended. Claire stopped mid-step, the triplets pausing beside her, their small hands clutching her gown. Every head turned back toward him, expectant. His pride burned like fire under the weight of so many eyes. "You think you can just walk in here and steal the spotlight?" Ethan spat, his composure fully gone now. "You're nothing without me. Nothing. I made you who you are." The crowd gasped. Amanda flinched, embarrassed by his public outburst. But Claire didn't flinch at all. She turned slowly, her face calm, her voice steady as a blade. "No, Ethan," she said firmly. "You made me stronger by leaving. You forced me to fight for my children, to build a life without shortcuts, without someone tearing me down. And look at us now. We didn't just survive. We thrived." Her daughter squeezed her hand, eyes shining with pride. The little girl spoke up, her voice carrying in the hushed room. "Mommy, you always tell us people show their true colors when they're scared. I think we just saw his." Laughter broke out among the guests, quiet at first, then spreading louder. It wasn't cruel laughter at Claire. It was laughter aimed at Ethan, the man unraveling in front of everyone. Amanda set her glass down, her voice ice cold. "Ethan, this is pathetic. I will not spend my wedding night watching you obsess over your ex-wife. If you can't let go of the past, maybe you don't deserve a future with me." She turned and stormed away, her gown trailing behind her. Gasps followed her exit. Ethan stood frozen, abandoned by the very bride he had chosen to flaunt. Alone, humiliated, he stared at Claire, who was now radiant in victory, not because she had planned it, but because she had nothing left to prove. Claire looked at him one last time. "I came here tonight because you invited me," she said softly, yet every word struck like thunder. "And I'm leaving knowing that the only person disgraced here is you." With that, she walked out of the ballroom, her triplets beside her, heads held high. The Rolls-Royce door opened, and the family stepped inside as cameras flashed, capturing the image that would be remembered long after the wedding night faded. Inside, the children giggled, leaning against their mother. Claire smiled at them, her heart full. She didn't need revenge. She already had everything that mattered. And back in that glittering ballroom, Ethan stood alone, realizing too late that the woman he tried to break had just shown everyone how unbreakable she truly was. The end.